got this, and I know this is like high in sodium, 350 milligrams of sodium. But I have scissors. Okay. So this might be kind of controversial, but I've noticed that like it's acceptable to make fun of certain people if they're not like considered a minority. And I get that like I have white privilege, I have male privilege, and all that stuff. And I understand what it's like to be treated as a woman. I don't know what it's like to be treated as a different race, but I do know that privilege is definitely a thing. It's based on experience, right? But there's been all these people coming in. I'm in Hot Springs right now, but they've been all over the state for the recovery of Little Rock. And of course, I'm grateful that people are coming in to help with the disaster relief of a tornado that took out a lot of homes and people died and a lot of people were hurt. However, they're not from here. So for one, they don't know how to drive here, and that's frustrating. But also, they keep making comments about how I dress, mostly my hat. And it's kind of weird, like, I guess it's kind of like to them, they think I'm wearing like a costume or something. Whereas to me, it's like, I come from a cattle farm, so it's more of a signature of, or like, not signature, but more of an indicator that I'm a cowboy, that I'm country, that I have money, that I live on a farm. A lot of people from the South, they don't know much about cowboy hats, even though that's where they're from. But they see them enough that when they see a hat, they recognize, like, oh, that person is stylish, or that person is probably from a farm or from a ranch. As someone who grew up on a farm, I know there's like significant differences in the different types of hats, different types of materials, different colors, different sizes, different brim sizes. If you've ever seen that show, Fairly Odd Parents, and Doug Dimmadome, whatever his name is, he has a white hat with the gold, and it's ridiculously tall, and it's a cartoon, so the hat's like 40 stories tall, but he's like the richest guy on the show, and he's like the owner of all the shopping malls and stuff. Well, that's like, it's a, and he wears like a white suit, but that's an indicator of wealth to have the white hat that's pretty tall. I mean, obviously no one wears a hat that's extremely tall in real life, but taller than a normal cowboy hat. That's an indicator of wealth. The gold being on there, that's an indicator of wealth, probably real gold. I found this. This is wool, and the shade of brown it is the same shade of brown as cows. A lot of times people will get the same color as their horses or their cows. Or sometimes you might see like a really bright red. I used to have a bright red hat, like a black hat. You can wear whatever kind of hat you want, but a lot of times people who are really into that culture, they choose their hats based on their economic status, and they know that like a white hat means you have more money, and if it has gold on it, you have more money. A black hat, that's more of like gambling type of indicator. But no one really knows these things anymore, so that's not really held to that standard. Like, I mean, there's a tie code, right? But you can wear whatever kind of tie you want. But I picked out my hat intentionally because it's very obviously a cattleman's hat. People just always call it a cowboy hat. Like, I like your cowboy hat. It does have the leather, real leather. Um, I think the biggest difference between a cattleman and a cowboy is cattlemen are more of like small family type farms, and cowboys are more like rancher type farmers. A cowboy, like the old terms, a cowboy is someone who rides a cow. Nowadays, we think of a cowboy as someone who rides a horse, right? You get all these terms mixed up and go based on mainstream media. I think it kind of gives me sort of a sheriff type of look. The camera kind of distorts it, the angle makes it look kind of weird, but it's a nice hat. It's got some bronze on it. But people who aren't from here, they just assume it's kind of like a costume, like, and they'll like make fun of me or like always have these comments and stuff. Or they talk about me to the other people that they're with. It's really strange. You don't see cowboy hats as often anymore. When I was a kid, you'd see them all the time. Now they mostly just wear baseball caps. Because the rest of the country is very influential, but also like it's not really as accepted to wear a cowboy hat. So they just stopped doing it. Like cowboy boots and oh, it's funny I said that because he's got a cowboy hat on his dash. I like wearing cowboy boots and overalls. That was really the style like 10, 20 years ago. Now they all wear the same, like blue jeans, t-shirt, baseball cap. A lot of people attack me because I use a southern dialect, and they're like, well, you said, and they'll quote whatever I said. That's not grammatically correct. You're supposed to say it this way. You said seen, and you're supposed to say saw. I'm like, fuck off. There's nothing wrong with different cultures and having your own culture, and even if it means being grammatically incorrect or being not stylish. Like schools will try to reform it out of you. And when I was a kid, they would be a lot more aggressive. I'm not sure how they do it now, but like I remember I'd be like in first, second, third grade, and I'd be talking to my friends, and I would say something that wasn't grammatically correct, and my teachers would be like so mad about it, and they're like, "Don't say that," and they'd correct me, and they would never explain like, okay, so that's how people talk around here, that because that's our region and it's a southern dialect, but to be grammatically correct, this is how you say it. Instead, they would just belittle me and tell me I'm stupid and that I sound unintelligent and that I need to try harder in school. And I didn't understand like there was a difference. So I'd get all confused about how I was supposed to speak. Because then I'd go like to my grandparents' house, and I would be using like proper English, and they'd be like, "Quit being a smart aleck," or "Don't talk to me like that," or I would like quote back something they had said, but I would say it grammatically correct, and they'd be like, "That ain't what I said. I don't know what you're talking about, but that definitely ain't what I said. I don't talk like that. I don't know why you start talking like that, but you're acting like you're better than everyone else, and you ain't." And I'd go back to school, and I'd slip up and say "ain't," and they would be like, "Detention." And even now, like on the internet, people still like constantly attack me and tell me that what I've said is grammatically incorrect and should say it this way, not that way. Whatever. You're just mad that I'm from a different culture than you are. You're trying to oppress me. That's not. It's not very PC of you. But it's fine because certain cultures can be attacked like that, and Southern culture has always been one of them. When I was a kid, I went to my grandparents' house up in Wyoming. My grandparents are like my dad's parents are like narcissists. Um, I went to their house and they were just like attacking me the whole time and like saying like making fun of my accent and saying I sounded dumb and constantly doing like that's not grammatically correct and blah blah blah. I'm like okay, and then there was this girl there. And I spoke Spanish back then, and it's one of those things where it's like if you don't use it, you lose it. And I quit practicing my Spanish a long time ago, so I can't speak it now. I should learn it. I mean, I live in America. I should know Spanish, but I lost it. So, anyways, I went to their house, and they live in Wyoming, and he's a preacher. And there was this girl there that was my age, and I could speak Spanish, and I was talking to her in Spanish. And then he came over there, and he was like, um, "Yeah, she speaks English too, and she probably knows English better than you do." And I was just like, "Okay." And then he's like, because your English is horrible. And then he goes on, and he's talking about how I'm this barefoot hick hillbilly from Arkansas. And I'm like, no, I'm not from the hills, and I wear shoes. you know, because I mean, to me, I didn't realize he was just trying to put me down and be mean. I thought he was like, I was so young and ignorant. I didn't realize that like he was just trying to be mean and be like, "Oh, you're a hick hillbilly," and like didn't even understand the nuance of what he was saying. That like somebody who's a hick is one thing. Somebody who's a hillbilly, that's another thing. Someone who's southern, that's another thing. Someone who's country, that's a completely different thing. But everyone gets these terms all mixed up, and they all think they're the same thing, and they're not. And so I was trying to explain to her, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not a hick, and I'm not a hillbilly. Um, I'm from the flatlands. We have cattle in the flatlands, and I'm from the country. I'm southern. I'm country. I'm cowboy, and and that was when I That was before I really knew the difference between like a cowboy and a cattleman, because up there they have like ranches and stuff, and people up there would be like, "Yeah, I'm a cowboy," but it was just completely different culture than what I was used to, and I'm like, okay. And then when I got older, I learned about the differences, and I was like, that's why it was so confusing, because they were actually cowboys, and I was a cattleman, and I didn't understand the nuance. But yeah, tried buying gas. Went to the Walmart has the gas stations, the Murphy's gas stations, and I have a virtual card on my phone. So I went up to the thing, and I went to pay for it, and it was like it messed up. Sometimes it does this where it like messes up, and it's like you've done too many taps, and I'm like, okay. And then they have to on their side like redo it. And so I'm standing there, and it was like, you did too many taps. And I told her, I was like, it says I did too many taps. And she's like, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it. I can't do it on my side. I'm like, okay. And so I pressed the X, and it wouldn't go away. I'm like, can we reset it? And she's like, you can try again, but I can't do it on my side. So I'm like, okay. And then I kept pressing the X. I'm like, can you reset it? And she's like, well, um, what does it say? I'm like, it says I've tried too many taps. And she's like, do you have the physical card? I'm like, no. And she's like, well, there's something we can do about it. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Just fucking reset it. That's all you gotta do. It's not hard. Just cancel the transaction and re-ring it up. Not a big deal. Come on. Grow the fuck up. Just laziness, I think, is what it is. I've noticed a lot of laziness. I went to, so I came down here to the Walmart, and I went to go to the bathroom, and they're supposed to like put a sign out or like put something out like that tells you that they're cleaning the bathroom. And I walked in, and he was in there to clean the bathroom, and he's like, he was mad. He was like, "This bathroom's closed." I'm like, "Okay." And so I left and went across the store to the other one. But I'm like, it's your fault that I walked in because you didn't put a sign out. So how was I supposed to just like know? Lazy, lazy, lazy. Yeah, I came all the way out here to Hot Springs to get some water from the springs. And those these people there, like, because like everyone's, like I said, here for the tornado relief. And there was these tourists down there at the spring water, and they're like, "Oh, is this any good?" And this one guy's like, "Oh yeah, it's really good. This is the only water I've drank for the last 17 years." And they're like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm thinking like, why are you gotta like act like he's lying? Like, why would somebody lie about that? Most of the people that live in this little area right here, this is the only water they drink. He's like, yeah, it's the only water I drink, and my plants too. Is I give this to my plants. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they started to fill up their like water bottles and stuff. And they're like, so can you just like drink it straight from the well? And I really wanted to be like, it's a spring. You, this is spring water. You're in Hot Springs at a spring. The sign there says the name of the spring. This is not a well. But I didn't say anything. I just let him be stupid, because you can't like educate people these days. They just get offended and continue to be stupid. They're never like, oh, well, I didn't know that. They're always like so set in their ways. So I was just like, whatever. And then yeah. So I still have to get gas, and then I can go back to Little Rock and start doing orders again. I'm kind of mad that I wasn't able to get gas there because I have to find a gas station. I hung out with my boyfriend last night, and that was nice. Slept in his bed and stuff. Fine. I don't know if I told you guys, like, I finally got prescription glasses. These are old prescription glasses, but prescription glasses in the least. So I see way better with them. A lot easier to find buildings and stuff, like apartment complexes. For some reason, like, people will put in their address and they'll be like, they'll put in the address for the apartment complex, and then they'll put in, like, you know, apartment building 25, you know, the apartment number is 12. I'm like, okay, and I get to the complex and there's literally like 52 buildings. I'm trying to find 25, but none of them are in order. They're like 1, 3, 5, 2, 8, 7, 20, 5. I mean, not 5. You know, 9, and then it'll be like 24, and then it'd be like 38, and it'd be like 18, and it just, like, none of it makes any sense. So you can have like apartment 1 on this side of the complex, and apartment 8 on the complete other side of the complex, and then apartment 9 is on this side of the complex, apartment 10 is on this side of the complex. But it'll almost make sense because it'll be like 7, 8, 9, and then 10 isn't there, so you have to walk all the way like around to find where 10 is at, because it could be anywhere. It's always different, it's always random. And they all have the same address. Like, every single building will be the same address on the GPS, so the GPS won't help you at all. Somebody has suggested this app called Beans. I was like, that's a stupid name for an app. So I downloaded it, and then apparently you have to pay for it. I'm like, what the hell? So anyways, yeah, I guess I gotta get to work because I need to make money.